You're right. You just close your eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube. So today's going to be a little different. I'll open with prayer, more conversational, and eventually we're going to be breaking these up into smaller videos. So I'll open in prayer. Yeshua, I pray that you would bless this time. I pray that you would cause it to be fruitful. Thank you, Lord, that even in the midst of things being weak and ephemeral and scattered, you can still accomplish great things, and your glory will rest in the weakest of people. And you can cause it that even though our clothing and our efforts should wane and waste away, that our sandals never give out, as long as your glory is there, that you could use our weakness and our resources and hold them together. So please use that today and bless us and bless others. I ask in Yeshua's name. Amen. Okay. So let's, I'm going to maybe change the height of this thing, which will be a little bit better. I'm going to open up the conversation to the entirety of the parsha. And I want us to be thinking about the conversation points that, will help people understand how the church should be structured, maybe help them see how the church is poorly structured already. I don't know, any kind of thoughts? And while you're doing that, I can maybe fandangle this camera and get it in a better spot. It just dawned on me that we could use more of our... How are we? Is that better? Is that all of us in there? That's pretty cool. Pretty close. Pretty close. All right. That's weird. YouTube has a different. That's funny.
Hey, they're always weird.
Okay. So let's start. Let's have a conversation about this week's Torah reading. We know that they're going to talk about how to make the priestly garments, the ephod, the breastplate, the outer garment, the bells, and various aspects of it. We were told about the oil for the lamp. They're going to talk about installing the priest and atonement. What else? I mean, there's a lot that could be touched on. Atonement is a foundational issue that gets addressed here that we could discuss and speak about.
One of the things that I was wondering is, because this portion of the Torah is like pre-Leviticus.
Yeah.
It almost seems like the pattern of the offerings that you consecrate for, or that you set apart to consecrate the priests, is like the pattern of the sacrificial order of the beginning of Leviticus, where it lays out, these are the kinds of offerings that you give, right? And so it's almost like 29 almost seems to fall into the same pattern of like, this is the order of offerings, right? Of the very beginning of Leviticus. You have the whole burnt offering, then you have the like sin offering, then you have the fellowship offering. And it almost seems to like track with that.
Yeah.
So that Exodus 29 becomes this kind of like, Exodus 29 and the offerings for priests becomes this like mini version of what the whole sacrificial order is.
You think? Oh, okay. So you think that this one offering will encapsulate and include all the others?
And I guess that's kind of the question: is like, are the sacrifices and offerings in 29 for the installment of priests, the consecration of priests? Are those? Yeah. Do those like span kind of the gamut?
Okay, do they span the gamut? To a degree, yes. We have some that are included in and I'm imagining you're talking about basically Leviticus chapter 1 through part of 6.
Yeah,
because it includes the Asham, which is a subset of 4, which of a sin offering. So we have mincha, which is like a cereal offering, multiple ones, multiple types of minchas. We have this weird thing where we have a young bull and we have 2 rams without defect. Here's something I want to put forward. An asham, which is called a guilt offering, has a peculiar function associated with it that matches this one. Another name for this offering is called an ordination offering. Does that show up in this week's? I can't remember if that shows up in Exodus or if it shows up in Leviticus. Ordination. It shows up in this one. Yeah, it's this idea of this is the offering you use to ordain priests. Okay, here's what's interesting. What is ordination, and why does it correlate to other asham offerings? Watch this. When you do an asham, you take two animals that are the same, and you apply blood to a person.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's weird about one thing that's weird about asham. It doesn't always get applied to a person, but I'll give an example of when you apply blood to a person. You apply blood to a person with an asham if they're a leper, because they're already outside of the camp, and we want them to elevate and go further in sacred space. So we want them to ascend. Imagine it like steps. A leper will ascend. Are Aaron and his sons about to ascend and go another step up? Yes.
Okay.
Blood ends up being applied to them. I think there's actually a similar thing going on with the Levites when an asham is offered for them. Now there's too many of them to put blood on, but they sprinkle them anyways with water. Okay. I think the ordination offering is actually related to the asham, and we know that ashams, they function kind of like a replica. It's the idea of a replica so that you can ascend into sacred space. So I think it's an asham.
Who were the other people? Priests, lepers?
Lepers have to have an asham, which is they have these two things, the two like animals that need to be shed, and blood gets put. Guess where it gets put on the leper?
Is it spattered on a leper with the hisses?
Earlobe.
Right on the earlobe, right on the thumb, right on the big toe.
Oh.
Which is what's going. Yeah.
All of
Yes.
those noises?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Same
interesting.
thing with the priest said.
Right.
Yeah, same thing as the priest. And so what's the difference? Well, the distinction is the leper has achieved a graded level of uncleanness that bars them from accessing the camp. Well, the sons of Aaron are already graded to be allowed to move around in the camp. They are not graded yet to be allowed to move around in the tent.
Okay.
So this will translate. This basically installs them and makes it possible for them to ascend a higher level. Keep in mind that the word ascend is a really helpful word. The word for, it's a weird thing. And the word for a whole burnt offering is an olah. Do you know what olah means? A stair or a step. To go up. A thing that goes up. These guys are leveling up. There's another way to explain this. And the asham is the mechanism that causes them to level up. Now, they don't shave their hair, but they do have to cover their hair. I mentioned that because the Levites have to offer basically an asham to be leveled up. And let's think of another category. People have to shave all their hair off to be leveled up. A leper has to shave all the hair all over the body so they can level up. The Levites shave all the hair off their body to level up. And the woman who's a non-Israelite, who's taken by a man during a time of war, has to shave all their hair off in order to level up and join Israel.
Right.
Pretty baby.
Is she great?
Avi.
Oh yeah, you do intros.
Huh?
Intros. Introduce people that are on the show.
Oh yeah, good call. That's a perfect time. Thank you. I said okay. We've got Abigail. That's Joe Ray's baby. To add to the confusion, Joe Shea is holding Joe Ray's baby named Abigail. And there's my brother Tony. And my son Gideon is off screen. That is part of a strategy. You can hear him. Say hi, Gids. You want to say hi? Say hi. Okay, that's all right. He's nervous. It's okay. And I am Josh. So that's everybody in the room right now. Okay. So yeah, I would say this is, and by the way, atonement is central for people to level up and move up. So it's not about they did a bad thing. It's more like they are unfit to share the space. They're unprepared and incapable. Unfit is probably a better word. They're unfit to level up, to move to that higher level.
And it's kind of like what we were saying last week about, or earlier this week about the priests being installed as like the phrase that keeps coming to mind for me is like realm treader, right?
Yes.
Because they do go between realms, and so they have to be prepared to go into a different realm.
Yeah.
Right, to like ascend to a heavenly realm.
Yeah.
Purified space, rarefied pit space. And
Sounds
so,
like a ranger subclass.
yeah.
Honestly, what they are, think of a leper. Think of people who have sinned. The priest becomes a kind of Sherpa or a chauffeur.
Yeah.
They are licensed. They are licensed and prepared. They have the right vehicle and the right equipment. And they transport people. They're transporters. They transport people into the realm. So the appropriate, what's the word? When a president goes somewhere, he needs, what's the word? It's not
Duty.
No, it's not a brigade. It's something like a. What does the Pope have? They call it something. It's not the Pope Mobile, but it's like when someone needs to move, but they need to be covered and protected. Brigade, not a brigade.
They have a security
Caravan?
detail.
Yeah, you can say it is part of a security detail, so that'll
I
work
like
for
the
now.
word that they use to reference the whole group.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about, yeah. But security detail will work for now.
I was
Yeah. It's not entourage.
Mark.
We'll find it later. But a security detail works. You have to give them support. You'll have to be support to carry them through, and that's what a priest does. They have the job of moving the items that Israel offers further into sacred space. And if you can imagine heaven and earth touching, and heaven has waters, they're the ones who have to wear the underwater gear, clean the fish tank, do all kinds of. There's like all kinds of weird things that the priests do, but they take care of this joining of realms, and they're peculiarly equipped to do that. And this offering equips them, it consecrates them.
Have you talked at all about how, like in verse 36, when it says sin offerings, how that word affects what we think about atonement in 2 Corinthians 5:21?
Yes, I actually can. And before I do, I wanted to say this. This is something that's weird about this. They eat it. They eat it. I forgot. I'm pretty sure another one that overlays with the Asham is the Nazarite. And these guys eat it. So I'm going to say this again. Atonement was made for them.
Right.
This is a strange offering. Atonement is made for the priest, and they eat it. Very strange. Because for a chatat, a sin offering, if atonement's being made for you, you can't eat it.
Yeah.
But this is like a fellowship offering in that way.
But if it's a sin,
The Nazarite eats it too. Yeah.
sin offering for the person doesn't eat it, the priest still do.
If the priest offers it for their own sins,
Gotcha.
they can't eat it.
But
and
it is for priestly.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, and here's another thing. When the blood is brought into the tent, no one eats it. Does that make sense? When blood from a chatat, a sin offering, is brought into, or let's come up with a better word. What's the word I typically use?
Purification.
Purification offering. That's right. It's a purification offering. If a purification offering's blood gets brought into the tent, nobody eats it. So in that way, it ends up functioning like a whole burnt. It gets treated like a whole burnt offering. But this is an interesting point. Let's jump to Joe's question, verse 36, and your question. Could you phrase it again? You want to see how it connects to 2 Corinthians 5:20?
5:21.
5:21. Why don't you read 2 Corinthians 5:21 out loud?
And God made him who knew no sin to become sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God.
Yes. Okay. And so
In
there,
him.
huh?
Righteousness of God in him.
The righteousness of God in him. Okay. Yeah. So he made him who knew no sin to be a sin offering. It's actually the simplest way to do it. In Hebrew, for Exodus 29:36, ufar chatat ta'aseh layom al kippurim. Okay. You will, and the bull or a young bull will be for the sin you will make for the day on the being atoned for, which they're going to talk about the altar. Okay, on the day that atonement is made, it's a passive reference. Kippurim, so the kippur, kippurim. They say the literal translation of the Hebrew is, and a bull is the sin you will make. A bull you will make for sin, or you will use the bull for sin on the day for atonement. They don't mean sin; they mean sin offering, which is why they translate it sin offering. But actually, a better way to say it is for the purification offering. The confusion comes from the fact that chatat it comes from the word chata, which is sin, but because of the way that the tet is doubled, this is a word that's actually an intensification. It's a PL. So it means to purge a thing, to purge it, which is actually its function here. That's the way it's going to function here. It's going to purge the altar. The altar's done nothing wrong. The altar hasn't sinned, but atonement's going to be made for it. It's going to be used as a sin offering. So the short answer is there is no word for sin offering. So the Hebrew in this verse says use a bull for the sin. But all your Bibles will say for the sin offering. Well, no duh. There's no word for sin offering in Hebrew. There's no word for sin offering in Greek. We know through context that this is metonymy. It's saying because it deals with this issue of purging and comes from that. Okay, we call it a sin offering. Another way to say it is, again, metonymy. If I look at a car and say, nice set of wheels, you don't say, thanks, they're Firestone. You know I'm talking about the whole car. Okay. If we say sin, okay, you can say that it's the offering that deals with sin or the offering that is concerned with it, but we know that it's a sin offering. If we look at that exact same word in 2 Corinthians and go to Hebrews, multiple times in Hebrews, 2 times actually, it will say, and I'm no longer desiring sin offerings or burnt offerings, but there's no word for sin offering in the Greek. It's just sin. And they know to translate it sin offering. I would argue that there's nothing wrong with the Greek there. Paul should be understood cultically. He should be understood talking about sacrifice, which is what he's discussing in that context. God took him who knew no sin to be a sin offering for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. That's the simplest way to read it. Yeah. And I love verse 36, what it leads into. You have to make atonement for an altar. If your idea of atonement doesn't include how to atone for objects, then your idea of atonement is not biblical.
Okay. You have to atone for space.
Yeah. You have to atone for space. You have to atone for space that's not bad. That's a thing that's even harder. Most people's idea of atonement, they don't even include space. But if they included space, they'd have no idea what to do with Hebrews 9:34. That because the shadows, because the copies of these heavenly things were cleansed with this other thing, the heavens themselves need to be cleansed with a higher offering. Why do the heavens need to be cleansed with an offering? Right? Why do the heavens need to be atoned for? If you can't answer the question, why do the heavens need to be atoned for in Hebrews 9:34, then your understanding of atonement is lacking biblically.
So, but that would also mean that Jesus did not become a sinner in order to atone for us.
Yeah. So there's when people take that verse in Paul's writing in Corinthians and they make all kinds of weird assertions. Some will say, well, he didn't become a sinner, but he became sin itself.
Yeah, like mystically it was.
Mystically, he became sin. Yeah,
while he was up on the cross.
Well, they take it further than just thrown upon him. They'll take the language that he bore it, but that he became it.
Right.
He became sin. This is a repulsive, disgusting idea, and this is really the only verse that you have to support that lexically, and it's because it's a mistranslation of it. It all depends on a faulty translation. It should be translated sin offering. And here's a problem you have to answer. Let's say Yeshua did become sin. Let's say we're completely wrong. Yes, Yeshua became sin. Okay. Did all of him become sin? Oh, yeah, all of them became sin. Like his spirit? No, not his spirit. Okay, but like his blood became sin? If his blood became sin, how could it be used to cleanse? Because the life is in the blood and his blood cleanses. Okay, well, not his blood. Okay, when did he stop being sin? At what point did he stop being sin? Was it when the breath left him? Was it when he was about to be resurrected? When did he stop being sin? It's a bizarre idea.
For how long would he have to be sin in order to make atonement? Yeah.
How long does he have to hold that category? Another problem you have is Messiah will speak of his death as a Passover offering that needs to be consumed. He says, my flesh is bread and food. You're to eat it. It's a sacrifice. It's sacrificial language. You don't eat sin. That's a bizarre concept. So the idea that some people would argue, well, we have to understand that he's fulfilling the Old Testament and he became sin. Okay, in which part of the Old Testament do they eat sin? In which part of the Old Testament are you allowed to take a thing that is sin, put it in front of Yahweh's face, and Yahweh says, "Ah, a pleasing aroma, sin." Bizarre.
That's precisely the thing that God doesn't like about what they're doing in Malachi, because they keep bringing him blemished offerings.
Yes.
And God even says, "You wouldn't even give this to your governor. Why are you giving it to me?"
Yes. It goes further because the word toava is a word that means a abomination, a hideous thing. That word is used, that idea is used in Malachi. But in Deuteronomy 17, it expressly says, if you bring a lamb or an offering that has a blemish or that is unclean, okay, that's perverse, okay, defiled, it is an abomination to Yahweh.
Yeah.
Hebrews tells us that Yeshua pleased the Father. He offered himself through the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit never left him. He offered himself through the Holy Spirit. So now the Holy Spirit, joined to Jesus, is helping him become sin and bringing that in front of the Father in a way that pleases him. Ephesians 5:2, he was a pleasing aroma. The idea that Yeshua became sin it's a big problem among Christians. And by the way, thankfully, and this part I hope and part of me hopes it offends the right parties. It's not that big of a problem because it's an innovation. It's an idea that's actually not millennia old.
Yeah.
It's a relatively new idea on the scene of Christianity, and you can trace it to post-Protestantism. So it's not that old. Yeah, Gids?
He made atonement for our sins, died, and he became sin. And how do you even he became sin?
Explain. You need to speak up.
You said he made atonement for our sins by dying.
Yes.
How would you be able to make an atonement if you are dirty or unclean?
That's exactly right. That's what we're saying. You're understanding it and you're saying it a different way. That's exactly right. You can't. For you, it's so simple that it's like this is not what sacrifice is about. But I don't think you're typical because from the time you were little, we've talked about temple and offering and what the function of sacrifice is. Most Christians don't actually care about how sacrifice works. They'll put on a blanket statement, Jesus fulfilled all of the Torah and all the sacrifices, but they themselves don't even know how. If you were to say to a typical Christian, I'm excited by that claim that Jesus fulfilled all of the Old Testament sacrifices, would you walk me through how? Crickets. They don't actually know how to tell you how he did it or to demonstrate that. They just know they're supposed to say that.
Yeah. So I was in thinking like back to the reading too. If Yeshua is an Asham and he says, my inner 12, like my disciples are to eat my blood and drink,
Yes.
eat my flesh, drink my blood. It's like, cool, you guys became priests. Like I offered this Asham for your ordination as priests in a way.
Yes.
Like
See, that was my
you
question.
become partakers
Yes.
of this sin offering, which is only for priests.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
he's like saying, step up,
Yes.
become priests.
Absolutely.
So that was part of my question, because if you bring a sin offering, you're not allowed to eat it,
If you bring a sin offering, you're not allowed to eat it.
right?
No.
Like as a person.
If you bring a sin offering that is
For
being
your
atoned
For
for
your
your
sin.
sin,
That's atoning for your sin.
you can't eat it.
So, but then the
The fact that they eat it shows it's not for their sin.
so then Yeshua being a purification offering, right?
Yeah.
He tells us break the bread and drink the wine.
Sure.
Remembrance of my body and of my blood. That would be ordination, like he's saying. Ordination is.
There's a way
not,
to see it. One of the problems you're going to have is this.
not him eating. You eating your own sin offering.
Here's a way that it's not neat. And I used this metaphor before, and I think I'm going to stick to it because I think it's helpful. I like saying the word buffet because it's ridiculous. Imagine Yeshua
Michael
going.
Buffet.
Yeah, imagine Michael
Christmas
Buffet,
special.
Christmas special. Everyone has Michael Buffet playing. It gets around November. So imagine Yeshua, and he's at a buffet of all the covenantal offerings, okay? And he says, oh, Moshe's job of being a judge and a shofet, I'll take that. Oh, Aaron's job of being high priest, I'll take that. Oh, David's job being king, I'll take that. He takes it all. Now imagine how messy that plate is, because it's all going in one plate, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a metaphor, Yeshua doesn't just fulfill Passover.
Mm-hmm.
He fulfills Yom Kippur, very different. He doesn't just fulfill that. I would say he fulfills this ordination offering. So these are very complicated pictures. How do all the one join into a composite? It's a fair nuance. You need a nuanced picture. I will say this. I would want to break it down categorically. Leviticus has the highest level of offering And this is what's so cool. Yeah, whole burnt. Okay. The second is the mincha, which is also no one gets to eat. It gets consumed in the fire. The priest gets to keep only a hand portion of it, called a memorial. The third highest is a shlamim, a fellowship offering. Believe it or not, to God, it's more valuable that you get to eat with him in fellowship. It's a higher order offering than the fourth, which is a sin offering, a chatat, a purification offering.
Okay, can you say this again? Olaf?
Yeah, an olah, which is a whole burnt offering,
Right.
which a mincha,
That's gift.
a cereal offering.
That's gift, right?
Olah.
Yeah,
Min- Mincha means, it's a gift.
gift.
It's a gift. It's a gift. It's typically a cereal offering, meaning grains.
Okay.
Now, here's how it works, though. I know this sounds weird, but why is a mincha on the heels of an olah? Why is that grain offering on the heels of the whole burnt offering? See, this is why it's not good to use the English translated terms. It's a poor man's olah. It's a poor man's burnt offering. It's more costly. The type of things you have to put in that cereal offering are sometimes like frankincense, and so it's costly and more expensive, and you don't get to eat it. You're not allowed to eat it. The priest takes a memorial portion before the rest gets given to Yahweh. So it's a whole burnt offering. And in a similar way, the priest only gets the skin from the whole burnt offering.
Right.
Other than that, Yahweh consumes all of it. That's why it's the holiest. Well, a shlamim is a offering where you come and you sit down and you eat with Yahweh. Here's what's interesting. Atonement still happens. People are getting atonement wrong. So Pesach, Passover, that Passover meal is like a type of shlamim. We eat with Yahweh.
Right.
This is similar to that. The priests are eating with Yahweh. They eat it before Yahweh. Okay? So there are different types of offerings. It's better to think in terms of the categories of the larger categories of the offerings and the functions that they fulfill.
What types of sins will these things not deal with?
Yeah, that's a good point. So Numbers 15 will make it clear, and this is what's so funny about it is, again, press the Christian, even if you're excited about it. Okay, so Jesus fulfilled all of these sacrificial offerings. Teach me about this. This is great. One of the things that shocks Christians a lot to learn is Numbers 15 tells us high-handed sins can't be atoned for through blood offering. So if somebody does something with a spirit of, the word is like arrogance or boiling, stewing, it's not. It's a word that's different from arrogant. It's like what's that word again? We studied it. The word we studied for to boil and to be arrogant. It's an idea. It has the idea of willful, with your fist raised. This kind of idea. So if you perform a deed like this, there is no blood offering for you. Intentional sin. Actually, Numbers 15 will say, well, sins that are shager, where you err, where you make an error, like stumble. That's the word, shager, to stumble. If you're like an unintentional one, those can be atoned for. No atonement can be made for a pompous, purposeful sin. Now, here's the distinction. It shows you that the way they understand human culpability is a little different from us. If somebody is under pressure and a priest comes and says, I testify, let anyone who does not answer with testimony be under the oath, be under the curse of the oath of Yahweh's name, okay? And that person rashly doesn't say anything and they hide it, that is considered to be a sin of shager, an error, because they were under pressure and it was an emotional action, this kind of thing. So their understanding of intentionality has levels, okay? That gets in, you can make atonement for that. If you lie or you steal under pressure, you do these kinds of things, you can make atonement for that. But you can't make atonement for high-handed sins. Purposeful iniquity, you can't make blood atonement for, except the only instance, okay? The only possible instance, if you wanted to make an exception, would be on the Day of Atonement. And it's when the high priest, and it's not a blood offering. That's the catch. It's where he confesses all the iniquities and sins onto the thing that goes to Azazel. Now, so there is no such thing as a blood offering that deals with high-handed iniquity. So what happens to those people? I mean, it's like how does Ezekiel 18 exist? Where it's like, if they do all, somehow, Ezekiel 18 is in our Old Testament. And Ezekiel 18 is so gracious. You normally think about how harsh Ezekiel seems because he says some really outrageous things about the sins of Judah. But he's actually really, really gentle. He represents God as this incredibly gentle person. He'll name generations of people who were sinning, right? And he'll name 6 or 7 deeds that they perform. I think 5 of them in his list are capital crimes.
Right.
Crimes that are hot, that you can't be atoned for, and you deserve the death penalty. And it says if the person in the middle of having performed these as a lifestyle repents and turns, God will forgive him, not hold it against him, and he starts over. It's like, whoa, how does that work? Where did that come from? How does that work? This one way to make sense of this is the thing we had said in a few weeks ago in a video. The most you can do to someone is stone them.
Right.
In some of these instances, the farthest you can go. Okay. Rather than like, oh, I'm so angry that they did this. I'll show God I love them. I'll kill all their family, and I'll do okay. Like we're not allowed to do that. And actually, Saul does this. Saul gets in trouble with this because he tries to please God by going beyond the Torah and executing. He basically does genocide against a group of people, trying to show his devotion, and it's not received well.
Do you think that it doesn't seem to me like the Greek maintains the same standard for anomia, which is
anomia is used in a lot of places. Often anomia can be used for transgression or iniquity.
Yeah.
It's just it's lawlessness.
Yeah, which seems like not at all a one-to-one mapping of what the Hebrew meant.
It is not. It is not. It's not. And this is one of those reasons why I think it's I know I'm not trying to be a butt about Greek, but one of the points I would make about Greek is if Greek is a punishment on Israel.
Yes.
If Israel had not sinned, we would have no authoritative text written in Greek.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's a shorthand way to say learning Greek isn't enough, because the authoritative texts that were there pre-diaspora, before the exile. So in Greek is I don't know if you could have picked a less one-to-one language, ancient language, to try to translate Hebrew into.
Right.
They're so different, worldview-wise, paradigm-wise, semantic domains, so different. So much so that their philosophy and their worldview affected their language to such a degree. There were certain concepts that were untranslatable back and forth.
Yep.
Just completely untranslatable.
Greek isn't nearly as concrete as Hebrew is.
That's right. Much more. And the things that Hebrew holds up the highest about God, you literally can't translate into Greek. So when Yahweh says his name over and over again, okay, when he says, this is who I am, next week's Torah portion is going to show this. This is my name, Yahweh, Yahweh, El, Rechon B'chanun, compassionate and gracious, Erech Chapim, slow to anger, V'rav Chesed V'emet, full of loyal love and faithfulness. These words, those core words in his name, compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, overflowing loyal love, overflowing faithfulness, these words get repeated all over the Tanakh, all over the Old Testament. And they have distinctive usages, and they're very important to understanding who Yahweh is. You know what it says in the Greek? I'll get to the word, I'll just translate one of those words, merciful, eleos, because I don't really know what gracious is. It might be gracious, compassionate. And then when I get to loyal love, I have no idea what that is, but chesed is the most important trait. I have no idea what that is, so I'll translate it polyeleos. So one of his traits is merciful, the other one is much merciful. These languages are very ill-suited to each other to try to translate, especially, and here's the grounds where they break down the hardest. Covenant. If when the Hebrews appreciate some kind of covenantal concept in their language, it breaks down terribly in Greek. A lot of these concepts are even repulsive to Greeks. Greeks, a person who's schooled in Greek philosophy and tries to understand divinity according to, a Greek paradigm, Yahweh is a repulsive character. He's a repulsive character.
It's an unfortunate thing because I want to go look that up today, and just what they call lawlessness versus what what the Hebrew calls iniquity is just so transparently false.
Yeah. Give me an example. Expand more. Do you think it soft pedals it, or what do you think?
It way broadens it. It like turns everything. Anything and everything counts
Got
as
it.
lawlessness.
Which makes it kind of like makes it a feet, makes it like mealy mouth. It doesn't have the teeth. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, there's no teeth.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you know what I think of? One way we could be gracious to the Greek translators is tell me that I know you know the answer. So what's the difference between the tone of the books of Kings and the tone of the Book of Chronicles? What's the difference?
Oh, well, Chronicles doesn't say anything bad about David.
Okay. Yeah. Why is Chronicles positive? Exile's already happened. We're already getting our asses beat. We don't need to be so hard. Let's talk about the good things. Let's talk about the good times because we already have our face buried in the ground of exile.
Right.
So one thing that might you could give. It's not entirely enough for license, but one way we could soften our understanding of what the Greek translators did is these guys are already in the middle of the diaspora. The people have already endured the tragedy of exile.
Yep.
Do we need to destroy them? Do we need to slam them that hard? So that could be a motivation for why they soft pedal it. But yeah, the Hebrew is much more punchy and to the gut and very intense. Very indicting. Okay.
You got any questions online?
Yeah, no, not yet. One of the things that we can discuss about openly is I'm thinking about, like I said, us going to the Torah reading, the day before, day of, doesn't need to be a big deal. Just looking at some of the headings or ideas or concepts that you think, this would be helpful. Let's discuss this. Let's have that ready. And actually let's divide our discussions into little smaller portions, and then we can make live streams, multiple videos. So, because a lot of people are having a hard time watching an hour, getting an hour in, trying to divide all the subject matter. And then also you have the problem of if we really think this material is worthwhile, these algorithms will bury long videos.
Yeah.
So they favor shorter videos. So not only, and part of the reason algorithms exist is because that's the human attention span. You can go and click through on the analytics and people drop off the longer the videos get.
Yeah, I think so for this week's reading, we did the first portion of the last video. This portion is mostly like priestly garments, which we touched on, like why they're for beauty and glory at the end of that last video. Then priestly offerings for consecration and like daily offerings, and then the last part is that altar of incense. Yeah. And we talked about that before we started the video, so I think we should I didn't go back over why the altar of incense is where it is in the reading.
Okay, yeah.
Because we also include where its location is in the
tabernacle. Okay. Well, I first want to bring up 2 points that I had. So one of the ways I prepare for these videos is I'll run on the treadmill, and Gideon will read. I have Gideon read to me the Torah portion in 3 versions. So he reads to me. I'm listening to it, nice. And that's how he prepares for it too. Well, as he was reading it, dawned on me: watch the colors in the priest's outfit. Watch the components of the priest's outfit. Look at the comparison between the components used for the priest's outfit and the entire tabernacle. Is the priest a tabernacle himself? Yeah. Very weird concept. That's it. But then in addition to that, on the heels of that, I had the thought, what is he? What is he? Yeah. He's like a cosmic man. He represents all of Israel. He's like an Adam. Yeah. On his chest, you have these stones. Yeah. Okay. Which represent all of them. And there's this weird thing where they say bears for judgment. I don't know why they do that in the LAB. I think it's a Protestant kind of thing. He bears the judgment of Israel. That paints a picture of you're going in like this. Yeah. Okay. No. Why? Contextually, how does he bear he's not bearing the judgment. It's Nasa. He lifts up his decisions, the decisions of judgment. And what does that make it look like? You know what it makes it look like? The Urim and the Tumim are there. Okay. He throws them down and he lifts up the decisions for the people to be made. Yeah. So it's an honorary position. He is, and I suddenly had this realization that the function of the priest there and the Urim and the Tumim right there for judgment is very reminiscent of Yeshua saying, when 2 or 3 of you are gathered, there I am in your midst. And whatever you guys judge on, whatever you agree on, when he's talking about agreement, he doesn't mean we agree we get a Lamborghini. Okay, he means that that he talks about literally like judgment. That's the same section where he talks about casting people out of the ecclesia. Okay, you're rendering decisions. We need the king present to help render these decisions. So when Yeshua talks about the authority of his disciples, it should be seen as reminiscent. I made that claim in other points. The best way to understand what is Yeshua exactly trying to say his followers are. Like everyone's hung up on the question of who is Yeshua saying Yeshua is. But Yeshua says weird stuff about his disciples too. What is he trying to present them as? He's trying to present them as priests, which is why he says they're allowed to gather grain on Shabbat. Look how the priests don't violate it. Look how David was able to get priestly food. He says they're priests, which is why, hey, look what the priests did. They went and slaughtered people who were their family members. They hated their father and their mother and their brother and their sister, and that's how Levi got separated out. You do the same thing. Well, in this instance, when 2 or 3 are gathered, it's for decisions. It's for rendering decisions to hear from God. And that's what Aaron's trying to do there. Did you want to say something in between?
They also had authority to exorcise demons. They had authority to heal people.
Yes.
These are very priestly functions.
Only priests can get someone clean.
They also, when Jesus calls them friends rather than slaves, like
yes,
the beings who divine the will of God are the priests. It's not the people.
Yeah, they're brought in close and they're brought in intimately.
To go the garment piece.
Yes.
Okay, so the garments, what part of the temple are they most closely associated with? Well, there's no bronze, there's no silver.
Oh yeah.
And there's where I'm actually pretty sure the only place in the temple that has purple, crimson, and gold braided thread is like on the veil of the inner tent.
Okay, so the inner tent. This is something we were seeing the other day when we were making the video. It's like there's 2 layers.
Yeah.
And you don't see the cherubim on the outer layer.
Yeah.
But this inner cloth has it. Does he have cherubim on him? Anywhere on him?
The priest?
Yes. Does he have it engraved or woven anywhere on him? That would be an interesting point.
I would think that the covering of his private parts would be the purpose of the cherubim.
No, yeah, not just the purpose, like the Nicholasine cover him, but I mean, are they engraved at all? Because one of the things you find in the inner part of the tent, he's already noted that the threads are the same. Mm-hmm. Another thing that distinguishes the inner part of the tent is that you're supposed to weave actual images of cherubim into the threads themselves.
But you said it's only on the inside.
Yeah, so it's
the
like,
inner veil.
Yeah, because it's like the idea that people outside don't get to see it.
Yeah.
They're not able to. They have this outer layer that's
Maybe it's on their underwear.
I don't know. Where were they? I feel like it's on the turban. I don't know. Interesting. No, right here. Watch. Yes.
Yeah. Where?
Pomegranates. Yes. So pomegranates and cherubim are the ones that get put on the inside of it so that it's visible. Well, same for them. They have pomegranates on the edge of it. Yeah, and gold. That is actually a really strong point, Shay. That they have no bronze on them.
Yeah.
That is a really strong point. Yes.
There's the pure gold rosette in 36 too. Medallion engraved with seal engravings. That's on his forehead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Those are gold.
Okay, linen is also so you don't sweat. All right, let's see. Okay, verse 36 is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's a designation of what he is. It's a sign. He literally has a sign on his head. Oh, crap. He has a sign on his head. This is similar to Ezekiel where they get marked for Yahweh.
Yep.
They belong to him.
Totally.
Same thing in Revelation. You get marked. And that's a core point to mark the beast, but then also you still get marked positively. And in Revelation, it's one of the few examples where you are forced to recognize that Yeshua is Yahweh, because one name is put on their forehead, but 2 objects are described as having their name put on their head. His name is put on their head, and both of them are named in Revelation. So Jesus and the Father, one name gets put on their head, though.
I mean,
they are one.
Well, he gave him the name above every name and made him as head over everything for the church.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you wanted
Yes.
to, you could make the argument for
Yes,
the
his
breast
name, yeah.
piece being a thing that, like, if the cherubim in the inner tent overshadow the place of judgment in the inner tent over the ark, then the breast piece almost functions like that for the priest. It's like it's decorated in a way that nothing else is, and it's engraved with engravings.
Yeah.
And there's like I don't know. You could. I feel like there's probably something to that.
Well, they're very costly and very precious, which would mean because only the high priest wears it. You then could ask the question, what function does the high priest have that none of the others do?
Yeah.
Well, some of it's going to be frequency and depth, but really it's that one function of going into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah.
And they think the word, this is something that's so simple linguistically for them that we miss. Heaven is a plural term in Hebrew. Heavens. And they ascend. The higher you go, the more precious the objects associated with that barrier.
Mhm.
So these are the most precious objects that you can literally think of, and they're brought into that area. And then the word in Hebrew is it's going to have a chotam, a seal, an engraving, and it just says Kodesh Yahweh, holy for Yahweh, a holiness for Yahweh actually, or a holy thing for Yahweh. Another way, if we were to take, actually, what does it say? Let's ask Joe. What does verse 28:36 say? Does it say hagios? Because that's a helpful understanding. You see saints get thrown around a lot in the New Testament, and I make the argument that hagios can be a holy object or a holy.
Is it 29:36?
29:36. No, 28:36. Yeah. Yeah. So a hagios could be a holy object or a person, a holy person. And if we're stressing object, then that makes better sense that Paul is using it as an architectural term, that we are all parts that belong in this complex.
The sons of Aaron will prepare tunics and sashes.
No, 20. Maybe the numbering is different in the Septuagint. It's where so that he will not die, you will make a pure gold rosette, you will engrave on it with seal engravings a holy object for Yahweh. Exodus 28, verse 36 in the Masoretic text.
Second half 36. How many verses are in chapter 28 in Exodus?
43.
I am missing 4 verses.
All right, let me see if I can look at my Septuagint and tell you the verse number in there, and then you go to it. We got an English one.
Forehead?
Yes, it's just before the forehead.
Yeah, on his forehead, something.
It's like the verse or
with a blue
two.
twisted yarn and it will be attached to the turban.
Right before that, it's the verse before that.
And it's verse 32.
32.
You will
Yep.
prepare a thin plate of pure gold and work into it a relief as on a seal. Holiness unto you.
Does it say what's the word there for holiness?
Hagiosma.
Yep.
So holy thing.
Yeah. So that's a way for us to understand what a saint
Holy
is.
place.
Yeah, a holy place or a holy thing. We don't need to take Paul's use of hagios and make it mean a person that's been distinguished in some kind of like weird, that's the way that the
To
Catholics
confirm
have made it.
miracles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And so, but actually what it is a holy vessel, or a holy object, a holy thing that each of us are being arranged and built into a temple. That's a better way to think about that term. And I think it's a better way because the New Covenant is better than the Old Covenant, primarily because it shifts out the functionaries but keeps the function intact. And the safest functionary within the Old Covenant is the temple complex and the Holy of Holies in particular. It's the safest functionary. Yeah.
Okay. Cherubim, that's what you're looking at? Cherub? Cherub?
Yeah.
And I don't know, this might be a stretch, but the stones that are on the breastplate are also the things that he said adorned the Prince of Tyre in Ezekiel 28.
In Ezekiel 28.
And he says
yes.
you're an anointed guardian cherub.
Yes. Yeah. It's exactly the same. All the gems are the same. Now
there's 3 that are missing.
Heiser says that that's Satan, Hasatan. Right. But other people say it's Adam. That's Adam.
Yeah, that would make more sense priestly, the priestly thing.
So
you're blameless in your ways from the day you're created to wickedness was found in you.
So then he himself a holy of holies.
Well, wouldn't two things over a breastplate be the thing over that would be covering the mercy seat,
Mm.
which is the conscience. So those two things themselves would be the true.
And you could say that the Orim and Thummim, we don't know what are
Yeah.
on them, but it's possible that they're something like a icosahedron with Hebrew letters scrawled on them. That's one possibility.
Sure, like
And another is just 2 out of 2. So you always ask yes or no questions. But either way, that's like the Torah, which is the decisions. How do we determine good and evil? How do we determine what to do? What decisions should be rendered? It's on their breastplate.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like, if the mercy seat is here,
Yeah.
and there's two things covering the mercy seat,
Yeah.
then those two things would be the
Like the cherubim.
And the way that they talk about the ephod is this, like, they cross, you double it over and they cross over the chest.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
cross over the shoulders, they cross to the back.
Yeah, I mean, this is
That's kind of similar.
it is. I would say that this is you say it has legs. It's the idea that it has buying power in terms of explanatory scope. For saying why, as Moses talks about these things over and over again, does it connect to more of the things Moses says? And it does. And he purposely repeats these patterns, so it just increases our ability to understand why. We're getting closer to understanding the teleology of these objects. Why are they constructed in a certain way? And the closer you get to answering the why question, I think, of the text, the closer are you really understanding the purpose of the text, if you can answer why.
Yeah, so then altered insights.
So first, like Tony said, where is the altar placed? The altar is put at the curtain. So literally, and it's a thick curtain. It's the one that blockades getting into the Holy of Holies. And it's the nearest to Yahweh who sits on the throne there.
Oh, is it a double? It's a double curtain.
Yeah.
Cool, just like
One thing that's a question is this: do they entail Yahweh speaking from the cherubim frequently or once a year? They envision that frequently.
Right.
Frequently. When Yahweh speaks, I know this sounds weird, but
Yeah.
imagine like a soothsayer or an oracle speaking through a veil. Yahweh speaks through it, which would mean who is hearing him speak? The priests. Because they're the only ones allowed in
He
there.
would have to speak more than once a year because the greatest of all things have to be brought to Moses, and Moses brings them to Yahweh.
Yeah, so we'll see Moses is different. So we've already said last
So
week,
yeah, because Moses,
he's just a different animal.
Moses and God speak face to face.
And on several occasions, and he just doesn't. He doesn't.
Moses' plate at the buffet is also
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. He transcends. He seems to transcend the covenant in certain ways. But either way, within the confines of this space, the priests are part of that space. They have to have the Urim and Thummim. They're coming to Yahweh with decisions. He's supposed to speak to them and tell them the answers with decisions, and they'll use the lots as a mechanism to hear him. Okay, so they are. Why is the altar of incense there? They're approaching him. This is why incense becomes associated with prayer. They're putting a sweet-smelling aroma in front of him, and it's called the tamid. Always, it never stops. This is correlated to the idea that pray without ceasing. There is always to be a sweet smell proceeding right in front of the curtain to me. And the priests alone wield it. So we've gotten to that order where the priests are installed now. They've been atoned for and sanctified and ordained. And now Moses gets the specifications of, based on the pattern, here's how you construct the altar of incense. It has a functional job. It pleases Yahweh. It's a type of offering. Incense can make atonement. The question within why, how is it, does it constantly make atonement? Is that what? I would argue that one of the ways that would be making atonement pretty frequently is when a priest goes into Yahweh's presence and they have to approach him and seek him for a decision. And they need to share space with him. Because atonement, by the way, atonement is a vehicle. I told you that priests are like sherpas or chauffeurs who are licensed, and they can navigate the vehicle to bring you up and ascend to a higher level. The atonement is a vehicle to move up a level. They're at the curtain, and they're talking to the highest point behind it. But this is partly why imagine that picture. Isn't that sad? Literally, I have a God who's supposed to be the most beautiful thing in the universe, and I hear him through a curtain. This is supposed to be at the heart of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews metaphor, where he says, it's as a symbol, the old covenant could never get past the veil. It could never get past the veil. Moshe dies. And when Moshe dies, nobody does what Moshe did. There's no new Moshe. Joshua takes over in his role, and he does have a lot of ecstatic experiences with Yahweh. Joshua did go on the mountain with Moshe. Joshua did go into the tent of meeting with Moshe. But he doesn't have the authority to go in and out as he pleases. Once Moshe dies, it's only the high priests and their descendants that get to arrange and rearrange that kind of space. And so you're kind of waiting. There's this looming figure that's missing. And we're stuck with this picture, the closest, apart from prophets having ecstatic experiences or visions, where God actually, his kavod is literally located, the curtain divides. And so there's this there's a longing. It's like, it's on the one hand, it's beautiful. On the other hand, it's a sad picture. Oh man, that jumped on. Looks like jumped off. Okay, are we good?
Yeah. I gotta go to class.
You pray?
Thank you. We should for the rest of the Torah and for insight and leading into the Torah word. Really continue to teach us. Continue to teach us a good. Sit here forever and still have so many questions. So you can explain these things to us. Because we want to know you more. We want to know what these things mean, what these things point to. It's so repeated. I pray that you would let us peer behind the veil. I pray we would be able to see, not to believe, talk about the experience and what you see, the things that you've shown us. We would be close to your heart as we understand it, as we invite us, bring the decisions to understand my heart.
Yeah, for sure.
Give you thanks, Lord. Give you thanks that you are approachable. Thank you that you are so humble and in honor in all the ways that we are small, meager, and less than. You cover so much, you cover so much in it, you cover so much. You cover over so many mistakes. You're willing to be called out to, you're willing to be heard, you're willing to be met. Thank you. Thank you for that. Desire to know you better, and to be close to you, look, and to listen. I have confidence in who you are and what you say before I.
Please, Yeshua.
And that we would be given more opportunities to choose to reflect. Lord, be gracious to us. Please, Yeshua.
Please,
be
Yeshua.
gracious to us when we fail. Please be gracious to us when we make it seem like a thing that is far away from us, Lord, you're showing near. The time of your return is coming soon, Yeshua. I pray you help us to take that seriously. I pray you help us to be keeping on the forefront of our mind. We need a good body now. So I pray that I see. I pray that our eyes can be different. I pray that our eyes can be beautiful. That we discovered about you, Lord, in the scripture beauty, that we discovered through prayer beauty, that we discovered through your revelation, yeah, let me divine prayer. Please, Yeshua. Bless you, Yeshua. Bless you, Lord. So, King of the universe, the most complex being that ever existed, Yeshua. So, I just thank you for that. Thank you that you let us feel around and find you.
Yes, Yeshua.
Please continue to teach us, Yeshua. I pray that these videos and Yeshua will be helpful. I pray that people might have good questions and will see our hearts. Thank you, Yeshua. That's why I say in the name of
Amen. All right. Bless you guys.